and a warm welcome from Kingsholm, home of Gloucester Rugby Football Club, a club steeped in military history. In fact, it wasn't that long ago that Dean Ryan was head coach here, served with the British Army, and of course Apo Satala, a famous back row for Army in Fiji, also used to play at this ground. Over there is the shed. Hopefully that'll be packed out for what should be an exciting fixture. This is the second instalment of our Inter-Services Rugby Championship, and today it's all about the Army and RAF. Helping me to navigate my way through everything that's happening on the pitch is Nick Bartlett, former Navy skipper. Nick, this is a great opportunity for players, and this is the first time that this fixture's been played on a Saturday.
Yeah, it is. I'm quite surprised. It's a week before Army-Navy game next week, so there's going to be a lot of things going on. I played you myself before as an RAF fixture. We played on a Wednesday night at Kingsholm. What's really nice, I mean, Horton and Pompey and obviously the Army HQs are great venues, but you know, we're playing at the Stoop and then coming to Twickenham and then obviously coming here. You know, it's fantastic environments, and the players will really relish the opportunity.
What does it say then in the way that the civilian rugby fraternity hold the military in the fact that all three games are now played at prestigious grounds?
Yeah, I think that service mentality is massive, and the guys really look after each other. But it just goes wider now, and it's then into the families, and now the Joe public, the civilians are all involved, and with Bryce Norton, Imaging Barracks, all these places around here, the old affiliation with HMS Gloucester. It's just such a great venue, and there's so many service personnel here and families, and it's a great occasion.
Well, let's focus on matters today on the pitch. So we've got the British Army starting their campaign up against an Air Force side, perhaps licking their wounds from that first fixture, defeat to the Royal Navy. What do the RAF have to do today? Don't say win, because we know that.
No, you've got to remember that in the last 4 games, the RAF have beaten the Army three of those times. So the Army will be out for revenge. The RAF, obviously, after losing to the Navy boys, will be trying to put things right. But what the RAF side can't do is sit off this Army side, because if they sit off and let this Army side play early on, then they will just get into their stride, and it will be a higher game.
Is it an advantage then that the Army come in now, because the Air Force have already got one fixture out of the way, or do you think they'll be caught cold because they're not up to the speed and the intensity of Inter-Services Rugby?
Yeah, it all depends on this fixture. Going into next week, they would have had a game behind the belt within 7 days, and then they go straight into it. But today, it's a bit of a tricky situation because you haven't got long to recover. They'll be straight back into camp on Monday, but their main focus will be on today. They've got to win today. As I said, they've lost 3 of the last four games against the RAF, and the RAF will be up for it. It should be a fascinating contest.
Well, we shall find out in more than just over 80 minutes or so. But let's join John Knighton and his guests to talk us through this one. Should be a top match.
The RAF and the Army women, which ended in a historic victory for the RAF. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little later on if you weren't here to enjoy that with us. But joining me on the gantry this evening and this afternoon, it's a great pleasure to welcome 2 former coaches, respectively for the Army and the Royal Navy, who've locked horns on many occasions, but they're here very much in a neutral capacity for us this afternoon. Andy Sanger, former Army coach, now with Harlequins, and Owen Salmon as well, former Royal Navy head coach. Gentlemen, thanks indeed for joining us today. And we are baked in sunshine here, of course. Right now, it's the conditions are a bit blustery and a bit overcast earlier on this morning, but we are expecting, I think, a cracking game, aren't we? And just sort of looking down on the pitch here at the moment, some very important people. These are the 2 gentlemen who will be leading the players out onto the field, our VIPs here today. Air Chief Marshal Sir Stephen Hillier, the Chief of the Defence Staff, and Lieutenant General Sir John Lorimer, the President of the Army Rugby Football Union, with Andy Moore as well from Holt's, the sponsors. But gentlemen, great occasion, and suddenly, this is Inter-Services Rugby at its best, isn't it? All 3 teams all buying together.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just chatting to Owen there. It's a great occasion. Great that we can get down to Kingsholm for the game. They're expecting sort of 6,500, 7,000. So we're looking for from an Army perspective, looking for a spectacle.
Oh, and as far as obviously the Navy had a terrific win over the RAF 3 weeks ago, the RAF will be really keen to bounce back, won't they? It's their centenary season in terms of RAF rugby. So what are you expecting from them this afternoon?
Well, they've got to have a really good comeback from the disappointment against the Navy. Looking at the sides out there, they've got some really good experience with obviously Josh McNally at second row and Rory Wood back in at scrum half, and looking for those leaders to drive the RAF forward.
Let's bring the hopefully the teams up onto the list so that we can actually see the teams. We'll start maybe with the Army team. Obviously they're the home team this afternoon, and just looking down their lineup today, very, very strong, aren't they, in the forwards again? But experience might count for everything today.
Yeah, I think the Army pack, there's a couple of standouts. Being in the second row, recently signed for Northampton Saints. He's expecting a good game today, and it'll be a great clash against McNally. And I think the Bolladau in the back row, who's been back to the form of that he was 3-4 years ago. I think he'll be a danger in the pack for the Army as well.
What's your thoughts on the Army team there, Owen? Because obviously Jack Prasad, we just sort of his name up there on the list as well. 36 years old, playing at number 10 today. He could be an absolute key player for the Army. Yeah,
certainly was a thorn in the Navy side a few years ago, and it'll be really interesting to see how he goes at 36 years old now. I'm sure he's still got that pace off the mark and that little hitch kick. He'll be very, very dangerous today, I'm sure.
Let's take a look at the RAF team then, as we said. Hoping to bounce back after the 25-10 disappointment against the Navy 3 weeks ago, on paper, they've got a fantastic forward line, haven't they? I mean, Manning and McNally and Philpott there. They should really be, right up there, shouldn't they? Yeah,
I think there'll be a real contest up front, as well as the guys you just mentioned. Rob Bell, is an out-and-out 7, and will be difficult for the Army to contain. Interesting that they've moved Dan Johnson from 6 to 8. Whether that's a tactical or an injury, we're a little bit unsure. But he's a good player as well. So yeah, the battle up front should be interesting.
And also in terms of kicking duties today, well, of course, the RAF sadly lacking Andy Byrne, who was injured in the game against the Navy. So coming in for them is Corporal Luke Riddell, just winning his 4th cap today for the RAF, playing at fly half. Going to be a big day for him, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing him play. He played 12 against the Navy 3 weeks ago. He's touted as being quite a skillful individual player. And with Sam Morby alongside him, who's played for Oxford University, they should be a good combination today.
They should. I mean, good crowd here building. I know 6,000 tickets have been sold here at Kingsholm, which is great. And it's also good to see that the shed on the far side of the field is going to have quite a big presence. That generates a huge atmosphere here at Kingsholm, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the shed, traditionally one of the in Gloucester, the hotbeds of rugby. They'll be vocal and hopefully getting stuck into both sides to add to the occasion.
They will indeed. The band of the parachute regiment standing by, obviously, to do the national anthem for us as the players now take to the field. The RAF in their traditional all sky blue, the Army marching out purposefully in their red and white. Great that this occasion has come to Kingsholm. Obviously in the past the RAF have played their home games at Holton. The away matches have always sort of varied between obviously Aldershot and Portsmouth, but bringing it to a Premiership stage like this is really taking the inter-services forward, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it raises the profile, which is huge. As we know, the Army Navy at Twickenham has grown and grown over the years, and this is where they used to play the traditional games for the RAF, and now playing at the Stoop and at Kingsholm. I think it's really, really important for all the forces sides to get their recognition.
And how important will the officials be today?
Well, hopefully not too important, and they don't interject. It was interesting. I looked at one of the stats in the last 3 years. The penalty count has been 51-11 against the Army. So let's hope that it's a low penalty count for both sides, and the officials have sort of no impact at all on the game.
I know the RAF were really, really hurting after that defeat against the Navy 3 weeks ago. I think it's taken them a long time to get it out of the system. Obviously, they have done now. They've had 3 weeks. Do you think that 3 weeks is long enough in a way to really make that difference, to really maybe put all the bits aside, the worries, the doubts maybe that might have crept in against the Navy?
Yeah, I think so. What they'd have done is they'd have looked at the areas where they were weak and then drawn a line under the game and moved on. It's all about them and their preparation now. They wouldn't worry too much about what happened in the Navy game, and they would have been building and focusing on this game really. Army
Captain Jamie Miller now just about to introduce to our VIPs today, Air Chief Marshal Sir Stephen Hillier, Chief of the Air Staff, and Lieutenant General Sir John Lorimer, President of the Army Rugby Football Union, and Andy Moore as well from the sponsors Holtz today. And isn't it fantastic? You've got the Chief of the Air Staff here supporting his team, and you've got General Sir John Lorimer supporting the Army as well. Fantastic to have that sort of level of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great day out for the senior officers as well as the fans. So good all round. But I know from an Army perspective, and I'm sure the RAF as well. General Lorimer is hugely invested in the sport, and I'm sure the RAF President exactly the same.
Just while this presentation is happening before the national anthem and obviously the all-important kick-off, let's just reflect maybe on the match we saw a bit earlier. And if you weren't with us earlier on here on Forces Network, then you missed an absolute cracker and a great bit of history, because the Royal Air Force have finally beaten the Army in the inter-services level. They won by 23 points to 14 here. It was a fantastic performance from the women in light blue, with Rhiannon Walton, Amy Cockayne, Lucy Nye and Kate Edwards scoring their tries. Chelsea Sneed and Lou Dodd getting the replies for the Army in the second half. But it was an outstanding performance from the Royal Air Force.
Yeah, absolutely. The quality of both teams, actually, it's it's a sort of Tyrrell 15's Premiership standard. I saw a tweet this morning from Giselle Maida, the Wasps are, and I think they had 8 players from Wasps on the field today. And the quality of the rugby was excellent. And I think credit to the RAF and their coaching and management team, a masterstroke to put Amy at 10, because she really controlled the game and sort of bossed her run for the RAF.
Most definitely, and Owen, I think you were stood up here with me watching the women's game a bit earlier on from up here, and you could see really how, particularly in the first half, they absolutely dominated the match. Yeah,
it was really good to watch. The RAF were very well drilled. Their set piece, scrummage and lineouts were excellent. They controlled the game, the tempo of the game, and the territory. And I think for the first half, the Army rarely broke out of their own half. And when the ball needs to go wide, they distributed the ball really well, and it was a pleasure to watch.
I should also mention as well the seniors game, or the masters game. It ended 33-24 to the Army against the RAF. Earlier on, that game was played over at Innsworth. Time now, though, for the national anthems. So a terrific atmosphere building here at Kingsholm this afternoon for the second of the inter-services fixtures of the season in this men's competition. Remember, victory here for the Army will set us up nicely, won't it, of course, for Twickenham next Saturday, a game you can see live across all our BFBS platforms, of course, TV as well as online. That's next Saturday. The RAF desperate to make sure that they have a say, at least, in this Inter-Services Championship for 2019, as the band of the Parachute Regiment, who performed magnificently for us here today, leave the field, or do their final bit of marching before they leave the field. Much to the appreciation of the crowd here. So Jack Prasad presiding over the kick-off here. It's the Army versus the RAF, and it's live here on Forces Network this afternoon for you. Wherever you're watching, hope you're sitting back and going to enjoy a great afternoon of rugby between these two sides. Remember, last year's game ended in a 13-12 win for the RAF, one of the closest games, I think, in the history of the competition. It may not be quite as close this afternoon. It all depends really on how things pan out in these early moments of the game. And away we go. And straight away Josh McNally into the action. He's going to be crucial for the Air Force this afternoon, his performance, but stolen by the Army. Very quickly brought away by their scrum half, Lloyd Wielden. Wielden again out to Prasad. Oh, and he's got an opening straight away. Ball goes inside the 22. Dangerous already as far as the Army are concerned, and the Air Force are given a penalty away in these early moments.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, it wasn't a particularly good kick from Prasad to start the game, but Josh fielded it well. And initially it looked like the Army weren't going to commit numbers, but Bean sort of forced the turnover at the breakdown by a strong counter-ruck. And then Prasad does what he does well, and that sort of outside break.
So an early opportunity then for the Army to make their mark on this match. And it's going to be Ratu Nalago who's going to be taking the kick. Beg your pardon, it's going to be Jonah, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's Davi Tanivalu is stepping up there to take the kick. He's not usually a regular kicker, so it'll be interesting how this goes.
So let's see what JD can do with this. And it's 3 points straight away for the Army. Yeah, apologies for the slight confusion there in the numbers. It looks like the Army do what they do best, swap jerseys.
It's the Fijians being classic for JZ. JD and Stephen Alagu would have had a little pack to change jerseys, no doubt.
Yeah, much to the delight of the commentary team here. But 3-0 to the Army. Just 2 minutes played here, and it's the sort of start that the Army would have been delighted about, but clearly from the Light Blues point of view, definitely not. Let's see what they can do to get back into the game early doors. The Army already showing their grit. Wielden with the clearance forward. Picked up though for the RAF. Toby Evans. Hutchinson. Wood brings it forward. Here's McNally. And another penalty conceded by the RAF, and straight away you can see Rob Bell getting involved there.
Yeah, that's great work at the breakdown by the Army back row there. The tackler went straight to the floor, and both flankers were straight in over the ball, and an easy penalty.
Sure, they're going to go for touch here. Even for JD, it's probably just about out of his range, isn't it?
He's going for it.
No, he is going to go for it. Interesting, the wind that was howling around Kingsholm this morning for the women's game, and it's still quite windy, but the posts which were rattling away like a rattlesnake earlier on, they are not moving so much now. So clearly JD feels he's got the opportunity here to really put some clear red water between the Army and the RAF early doors. That's confidence for you. Maybe the wind is swirling around a bit more on the pitch than we thought. But it is a bright afternoon here in Gloucestershire, which is terrific. As he takes the kick and goes away to the right. So it remains 3-0 to the Army here. 4 minutes played in this inter-services clash. But the writing's on the wall, though, for the RAF. They can't afford to give, silly points away, can they? From
no, absolutely. I mean, credit the Army thus far. They've had the best of the sort of the opening exchanges, and they look dangerous when they have the ball. I think JD is more of a clubber than perhaps a technical kicker, but he's got a bit of confidence, which is good.
And we had to remember, of course, the Army missing Rocco, who is injured, and he's a sort of player who makes a huge difference to any side, and most definitely to the Army, as you'll know, Andy, from obviously from your time as coach, your several periods as Army head coach. As they drive forward again, Pataki. Oh, that's a lovely run, and here is the chance now for Lewis Bean, just signed for Northampton, of course. Great drive and an opportunity now for the Army, surely to stretch their lead. Going to held up on the line, but it is going to be a try, and it really is. It's a great move for the Army.
It was interesting. The Army changed the point of attack. They hit it wide, they went back inside to people, and then Bean doing that, a classic second row 30-40 metre hit. I mean, Boller down made hard work of it, but eventually flips it out. So I think Tooth scoring in the corner.
It looks like him, doesn't it? Yeah. And Dan Tooth getting the try to give the Army an 8-0 lead, and they really have been totally in command so far. It's impressive stuff from them so far, Owen.
Yeah, very much so. They're on the front foot, which is always a danger. With Lewis Bean making that break, the RAF just didn't number up properly. Went straight through a huge gap, and when you've got the likes of Jack Prasad in the back line with front foot ball, it's very difficult to stop.
This could be a difficult afternoon for the Air Force. Made no impact really at all so far in the Army half of the field. And already the Army could stretch their lead into double figures here, as JD takes the conversion attempt, which goes wide, and it remains 8-0. 7 minutes played here at Kingsholm, if you're just joining us, live on the Forces Network this afternoon. And a brilliant start for the Army in this inter-services match.
I mean, really, every time they've got into the 22, they've looked, they've looked dangerous, and they've come away with points.
Obviously, watching this from your Royal Navy, from a Royal Navy perspective, Owen, I'm sure there's going to be a few people in the crowd here from the Navy watching this today. Wonder what they'll be making of it so far.
Yeah, very much so. It's still the opening exchanges, but the Army are getting over that gain line, and the RAF are getting quite narrow in defence, committing to that breakdown a little bit too much at the moment, and the Army are getting some good go-forward ball, which is very difficult to try and defend against.
I mean, Lewis Bean already, he's making an incredible impact, isn't he, already on this match? The way he drove forward for the first of the Army tries, and I talked about the wind earlier, and you just saw the wind then really pick that ball up. So this is not the day for kicking, is it?
No, absolutely. I mean, up in this sort of elevated position, you don't really see, but there's clearly a strong wind against the Army, and Prasad's kicking is generally not the best anyway, so best keep the ball in hand.
But it is another penalty to the Army, and this time it'll be Junior Buller-Macau who kicked that over the shed. Another lost ball. Hooker Austin will put the ball into the line out. It'll be interesting to see how this one goes. So the ball flies well over towards the Army side, but it went in well. It's been stolen by the RAF as they bring it clear. Rob Bell getting involved there again. What can the RAF do with this one? Ball goes out wide and a chance for Toby Mann. Just on the halfway line. Wood inside once again to Bell. Mann out to Luke Riddle, who will have the kicking duties for the Air Force today. And this time it's the RAF who win the penalty, which will be a bit of a relief. And it's the first penalty they've won, I think, in the game, and we're, nearly 10 minutes, in fact, exactly 10 minutes into the game.
Hopefully the RAF can get some territory from here and use their trusted line out and look to catch and drive and get some better field position. And
the clear wind advantage that we just saw there that they have. Philpott then with the put in, but it's the Army who've won it, and that's always the danger. The ball is going to veer across to the right hand side from the line out, isn't it?
To be fair to the RAF there, I mean, that was a great steal off being there. He got up early up at the front. The throw was slightly underthrown, and that's what he does.
Oh, a great chance now for Bolado. Oh, a lovely through ball, and here comes the Army with a real chance now for Tooth, and it's going to be a try. Yes, second try for the Army, and it's JD, Jonah Devantalabalu, who scores the try after 11 minutes to really put some clear light between the Army and the RAF. They now lead by 13 points to 0.
I mean, all the damage done then by Bolado through the middle. He goes straight through 2 RAF defenders, then beats another. Great offload in the tackle. One thing that the Army are good at is playing in that loose sort of open field rugby, and credit to them, that was a great score.
It really was. Takes them to 13-0, and we've only played 11 and a half minutes here at Kingsholm.
Beanie got it well, to be fair. Yeah.
You mentioned Lewis Boone getting out jumped in the line out. That's quite a remarkable occurrence as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, he had one stolen earlier, but then he's taken one back, so it's 1-1 in the line out at the moment.
But line outs don't count. What counts is what's on the board. And the Army have a chance to further increase their lead here. This time Jack Prasad is going to do the duties, holding the ball in position. Jonah winning just his third cap today for the Army, and he tried to use the wind but didn't quite work, and so the conversion missed. 13-0 remains the score here. If you're just joining us live on the Forces Network this afternoon, you're more than welcome wherever you are around the world. I'm sure if you're supporting the Light Blues of the RAF, you'll be hoping they can really start to make a bit of an impression here. If you're supporting the Army, well, you'll be pretty chuffed with how things have gone for them so far. Oh, that's the ball dropped there by Bean, I think. Referee allowing play to go forward. Wood. But the Army holding line on their 22. What can Bell do? Runs into a couple of Fijian brick walls, but he will win the penalty for the RAF. So I just wonder whether they'll be tempted to have at least go for goal and at least get something on the board.
Yeah, I think they will. I mean, they've Siva on the right wing as we look at, he's come in and he's just caught him slightly high, and the ref's given a penalty for high tackle. RAF just need to settle the game a bit, take a bit of steam out of it and get and ideally for them get 3 points on the board.
Well, this is an important moment, of course, for Luke Riddle, who has come in, as we said, on kicking duties today, stepping in for Andy Byrne. I was talking to Andy just before the game started, and obviously he's gutted that he's not out there playing today, but hopeful of making a recovery from the shoulder injury that he sustained against the Navy 3 weeks ago. But again, this win's not going to make it easy for Riddle, as he attempts to get 3 points on the board for the Air Force. And the kick is good. Almost a quarter of an hour played here at Kingsholm, and he'll be pleased about that. I mean, it's good for the Air Force, obviously, to get on the board, but good for Luke Riddle, because who knows, there may be more opportunities later in the game that he needs to be able to take.
Yeah, it was definitely a solid, confident strike there, and hopefully that'll lift the RAF, and playing with the wind, hopefully they can do a bit more in this first half.
McNally goes up, but it's won by the Army. Stuart Cross winning that well. Fed out to Wielden. And driving forward is their captain, Jamie Miller. Wielden again. Out to Prasad. Oh, this is nice on the Army. And it looks like they're going to go in for another try. Yes, it's too easy. The swallow dive says it all. And
again, pretty basic
brilliant
rugby, to be fair, and the RF will be disappointed. Jamie Miller, great leg drive in the tackle, makes sort of 6-7 metres. Lloyd Wielden, lovely surface off the base, and you just can't give Junior Bull-McCowan any space, because he will exploit you.
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely an experienced player, but it all comes down back to the basics, really. They couldn't secure the restart again with the great leg drive, and then scored off in the corner.
And one has to say, this is all going horribly wrong for the Royal Air Force.
Yeah, no,
to
absolutely.
concede 3 tries within the first 20 minutes of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, stating the obvious, it's not what they wanted, but actually they've been sort of, architects of their own downfall, to be fair. It's missed tackles, it's allowing the Army quick possession, and if you do that, they will exploit you, as they're showing.
18-3. The Reds marching on here towards Twickenham next Saturday. And JD not even bothering, I think, in the end with the conversion.
I mean, it's a strong win there, so, and it doesn't help that the referee's made him take a drop out as he's lost the ball as he's gone to kick it.
So the RAF will try and build again. It's almost a reverse of what we saw in the women's game earlier, where the RAF was so dominant against the Army. But it's very much the Army's game at the moment here at Kingsholm. Wielden with the ball. See, the wind brings it forward. Here's Wood. Senses an opening. In fact, it was their fullback Toby Evans, I should say. Wood drops it, and that'll be a knock on, and it'll be the referee's going to allow play to go forward. Army have it. Wielden. And here's Jack Prasad, and he's again going wide, and it's going to be another opportunity for Junior, but he's in. No, it was a flag in touch. I think there was a referee said his foot was in touch, and so is that going to count? No, it isn't. I think foot in touch.
I mean, it's a bit of a wasted opportunity there. Mind you, if you're going to get knocked into touch as a winger, it's in the act of trying to score. So, but Nailagu will be disappointed.
Again, it comes from another RAF turnover at the breakdown, and at the moment, it's really hurting them.
Josh McNally rises above all to claim the line out. And the Air Force do have it. Try and clear the line. That's a good clearance there by Riddle. Relieves the pressure for now. But this game has really developed the way we thought it might if the Air Force couldn't contain the wingers. And the Army backs really have been completely dominant so far, haven't they? As have the forwards, to be honest. Yeah,
I think actually he's from a strong platform. Again, a classic, a great line out there from Bean. Good leg drive. And if they get quick ball, which it looks like, then they look dangerous.
Prasad. Oh, yes. It's going to be another try, and this time it's Dan Tooth over for his second try. We are halfway through this first half, and the Army are now leading by 23 points to 3.
Again, that was a great line out from the Army there. Took the ball forward, and it was just the first up missed tackles, which have to be made at this level.
And under the post, this is a guaranteed extra 2 points really for the Army, and it has just all gone hopelessly wrong for the boys in light blue. Really has. Conversion goes over. 25-3 the score at this halfway stage in this inter-services game. So the Army in 20 minutes have done what the Navy did in 80, and that's scored 25 points against the Air Force.
Yeah, we've touched on it though. It's going to be a long old day for the RAF until they start, making their first up tackles, being a bit more committed in the contact area, because they're giving the Army an armchair ride, and that's a dangerous thing to do.
But it really is. And the Army will be utterly relentless in the way they pursue this game now, with such a really good level to build from. They could really start playing the champagne rugby in a few minutes. But the RAF have won another penalty. There's a bit of fisticuffs going on down there. Surprisingly enough, Rob Bell is involved.
Generally, when there's a little bit of niggle off the ball, he's the closest to it, and he does what he does very well, and tries to disrupt the opposition.
Interesting that Riddle's gone for the kick into touch from that penalty rather than going for goal. But at this stage, penalties are not really enough, are they? Even at this stage in the game, the RAF desperately need a try.
No, definitely. I think they've just got to get a foothold in the game, and like I've said before, their line-out's usually their go-to and their line-out drive, so hopefully we can see something more from the RAF.
That line-out ends up in red hands with Jack Prasad, who's really been an absolute master so far. He's been the magician in the middle there in the centre for the Army as they win a penalty.
Interesting there, the body language from Philpott and Bell. You can see they're starting to get frustrated, a little bit agitated with the ref, and that kind of negative sort of language and that negative chat can spread, and it isn't going to help the RAF cause at all.
It's interesting as well how quiet Josh McNally has been so far as well, and that's maybe because the Army haven't allowed him to get into the game.
No, and that's it. And I'm sure the Army has spoken about it this week, and trying to keep their big players quiet. And obviously, Josh is a talisman of the team. If they can do that, then it's all for the Army, really.
Referee will bring that back for the knock-on. The RAF will bring this scrum into play. I think it's we think it's the first scrum the RAF have won in this match. with 24 minutes on the clock. So the Army matching the clock almost point for minute at the moment. 25-3 they lead. And well worth that lead as well, because they really have been the dominant force in this match so far.
Over the last few years, this has been, one of the sort of hotly contested areas of the game. But I think the Army front row fancy it this year. They've got a fair amount of experience there, when with the added weight of Beanie and Parkin in the second row. I think they're hoping to probably get a bit of ascendancy in this area.
Well, they've certainly got a great blend of youth and experience, haven't they, with Ken Dowding there earning his 18th cap today, Pete Austin his 12th cap, and Nathaniel Titchard-Jones earning his 13th cap. Plenty of caps for them, but the RAF will try and drive it forward, but the referee has said no, you're going to have to come back and take this penalty when I say you take it. At this stage, Owen, do you see any way back for the Air Force, the way things are going? I mean, things can change in games, obviously. Is there any way back for the, even at this early stage? I mean, we're only, a quarter of the way into the match. Yeah,
there's always a way back in. It's just really important to try and pick up some momentum and get some go forward. They really, really need to get a foothold in the game. Their set piece, as I've spoken about before, has been their strength in the past. They've lost both their lineouts, and their scrum is going backwards at a rate of knots at the moment. They really just need to focus on getting the basics right, and hopefully they can secure this lineout.
I mean, we're in quite a high up position here, but you can see the head, the body language doesn't look right from the Air Force, does it, at all?
No, it certainly doesn't. They're not getting the rub of the green. I really believe if they can get a score here, it'll change the perspective of the game.
And they've won another penalty. And once again going for touch to get themselves right up with a chance to at least get something. If they can get a try before half time, that'll help them a little bit. But the Army hold all the aces in the pack at the moment. Philpott with the put in to the line out. Won by McNally. Bell has it. In the maul. Driving forward. It's a great drive forward for the Air Force. Their best bit of play so far in the match. Can they get something out of it? This is what the RAF have done so well over the last few years. They've created opportunities and scored from these sort of situations. And they're getting very close to the line. Once again, really close. You can just see the ball coming out. Oh, and it's desperately short of the line. Army holding so far. And are they over? No, not just yet. These are crucial moments for the Air Force in this match. And they've won another penalty.
The Army have got to be really careful here now. That's a couple of penalties they've given away close to their line, and the next one may result in a yellow card.
Or even a penalty try, I guess, as well, if the referee deems it. Dave Manning, the RAF captain, just rallying his troops, rallying his forwards. What can we do here? What can they do here? It's this sort of possession that you need to get something out of, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, if the RAF, don't come away from points here, that'll be a second out. But so far they look reasonably organised in their pick and drive. Credit to the Army, they've held it out thus far. But I think that's 3 penalties on the bounce, so they just need to be careful. I think one more, and the ref might be looking at his yellow card.
Well, nearly half an hour of real time played. Obviously, the timekeepers stopped the clock, so we're only giving you approximate time. So we are nearly half an hour into this match. If you're just joining us on Forces Network this afternoon, it's belonged to the Army so far. They lead by 25 points to 3. They scored 4 tries so far in this game and have looked very comfortable when they've had the ball. This has been the best period of play for the RAF in the game so far, and as we say, it's really important for them to try and get at least something from all the efforts that they've put in. They have the wind advantage as well, so it's drive time again. Getting encouraged by the supporters here. That's Bell. Drive forward from Matt Harris. Bell. Terrific leadership from these guys at the moment, but the Army are holding well. The Army defence holding out well here. Wood. Can the RAF get something here? Oh, it's been lost and the ball will go into touch, and that will be almost a moral victory for the Army there.
I'm actually surprised that the RAF tried to ship it out. Actually, the numbers in the back line were what I think, sort of numbered off nicely, arguably in the favour of the Army. So they perhaps should have just kept it in there tight and maybe, either nicked another penalty or best case scenario, get a try.
Is it rather panic mode?
Yeah, maybe I think it was. The Army's defence was very good close in. The RAF's pick and go game is good. It's how they scored against the Navy a few weeks ago. They didn't get any purchase out of the Army defence and tried to go wide, and obviously the ball ended up in touch.
And that'll be a huge disappointment to the Light Blues for all that possession they've had. To get nothing out of it at this stage is another mortal blow in a way.
Yeah, I think it's important now that with this wind that the Army are faced into, not to give any penalties away and let them try and either play it out of their 22 or wait for a short touch kick and then build again.
It really is a time for leadership on the field, and you can see there the close-ups of some very important RAF players. Josh McNally, who's such a leader as well. He's obviously not captain here. Dave Manning is captain, but he is such a leader who brings so much to the RAF team, and they'll be just trying to rally the boys to just keep up the momentum that they've had in the last few minutes. But it's the Army who win the line out, and they'll clear. That's great play from Junior Bulamaku. Army drive it forward again. Bolado. And it goes into touch.
I mean, if there's one thing that the Army coaching team will be disappointed with, whilst their exit from the kickoffs has been good, their ability to get out the 22 with their kicking game hasn't been great, and that's an example of it. Juniors at 15. Jack Prasad, a hugely talented player, not the greatest tactical kicker, and it's something that they'll need to probably improve later on in this game and certainly for next week.
Is that something they are lacking then, kicking ability?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a well-hidden secret, that the kicking game, is not our greatest, but they compensate in other areas.
Titchard Jones, great little shimmy there from him. But the RAF have won it back. That's great play. McNally. Oh, the kick forward, charged down by the Army, and the referee says that's a penalty.
I think he's
a scrum.
Yeah, he's gone for a scrum. A knock on both sides. So I think it's going to be an Army scrum. Yeah, but as we were saying before, that phase of play, the ability to get out of our own half from a kicking game is not great. And they'll rely on the pace and the guile of the midfield and the halfbacks, which is there in plenty of abundance.
So the RAF have the put in, presumably because their knock-on was second. I thought it was first. Oh. Anyway, Rory Wood is the man who's got the ball. What a servant he's been to RAF Rugby over the years as well. He's, I think he's their oldest player. He's the senior member of the team, the father of the team. But even he can't stop the great train that is.
That is not a good sign for the RAF to go back in the scrum like that and then unleash these boys.
Oh, it's lovely stuff. Junior Bulumako inside the 22, and it looks a matter of time. Lewis Bean before maybe the Army are going to score again. Prasad, oh, that's a lovely jink. Perfectly laid on, and he's over for the try. Pete Austin this time.
I think it was Dowding, and you can't take a try off a prop, especially from 80 metres that he did, as he'll be telling you later. But that was some great play by the Army backline. But it come from a pretty shocking RAF scrum, to be fair, and it doesn't look good.
They really have been the masters of their own downfall so far in this game. It's another one just about under the posts, and 30 points to 3. If you're an Army fan, that looks pretty sweet. If you support the light blues, well, absolutely not. And there's going to be a lot of work for Howard Parr and his coaching staff to work on at half-time. I'm not quite sure what they'll be saying to the players, but they have been the architects of their own downfall so far. As Dave, as he's known, takes the conversion, and it's wide. So it remains 30 points to 3 in favour of the team in red here. 5 tries in the first 35 minutes.
Yeah, you do have to fear for the RAF at the moment. They're not winning any of their set-piece ball. They're about to make a replacement here as well. When they do get turnover ball, the backs of the Army are just running right at the moment, and it's going to be really difficult for the RAF to get back into this game.
So Owen Smith coming on, the centre. And he's replaced Sam Randall. So Smith for Randall, who doesn't look injured.
Josh McNally was definitely off his feet there, but even though he will protest, but the fact that he was horizontal on the floor probably gives it away.
The RAF players, they look shattered, don't they, already, as if they've just been, trying to stop a train, and so far they've not stopped the train.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of hands on hips, a lot of heavy breathing, looking down at the floor. It's not great body language.
Austin with the line out then for the Army. Brilliantly collected by Bean. And they set them all up, and Austin again inside the 22. It just seems that the Army, every time they go forward, they look like they're going to score. A penalty conceded by Rob Bell. No argument there.
I think Rob's a bit lucky there that that's not a yellow, because it's certainly a professional foul. It's in the 22, but I think the ref, given the nature of the score and the way the game's going, has perhaps been a tad lenient.
And it kind of sums up the RAF's first half in many ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, poor decision making at the breakdown. They've been poor in defence. Again, Jamie Miller in the midfield. He's got sort of 3, 4, 5 metres, and he's put them on a back foot.
And I'm sure members of the Royal Navy are watching this afternoon, and just it's certainly food for thought for them, and it's certainly food for thought as well for the RAF coaching staff, who are looking pretty pensive down there as the Army drive forward once again. That's their skipper, Jamie Miller. Out to Prasad. JD's spotted a gap, and he's going to go through, and he's going to score again. That is a 6th try for the Army, and they now race ahead to lead by 35 points to 3.
It's great Army build up there. It's a great hit up the middle there, getting over the gain line, quick ball. The wingers come from the blind side, a couple of missed tackles, and he's over in the corner again.
Try number 6 for the Army. Well, Andy, of course, you were Army head coach this time last year, and what you'd have given for a few of these tries in the game at Halton this time last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the Army, they've been absolutely clinical. But I think the RAF will be looking at themselves. That was a relatively simple. We've hit up the middle, we've gone with the flow. Jack has hit JD out the back, and they've just missed 2 tackles. They're
just not turned up.
Yeah, it's been
just
poor,
not turned up
poor
today.
play from the RAF. You've got to call it as it is. But the Army absolutely have capitalised and looked dangerous, particularly, the back three with Jack Prasad calling the shots.
And the conversion is good. 37 points to 3, the score. We're now into towards the end of this first half here. My stopwatch makes it 40 minutes. And surely that was dropped, wasn't it, by Bolado? It'll come back for the scrum.
I mean, the Army have done an individual error there, but actually it was a poor RAF kick. It's not really. If you're going to kick long, let's kick long and let's get a hard chase, because you can't compete there. It's just landed inside the 22, not much height on it. Pollard catches that, and he's got a 15-metre run up, which you don't want Pollard out running at you from 15 metres.
Absolutely not. Wood with the put in. But look how the Army have turned it around, and they're the ones who've won the penalty.
Yeah, they're absolutely dominating the scrummage at the moment. The RAF did really well against the Navy in the scrummages, so that'll be interesting to see what happens next week at Twickenham.
It's interesting, isn't it, how all thoughts are turning towards Twickenham even at this stage in the match here, which is a real shame as far as the Air Force are concerned, because I know how desperate they were to improve on things after the defeats by the Navy 3 weeks ago. And I did say to you earlier on, before we kicked off, how much will that defeat have hurt them? I think it's hurt them a lot more than maybe we thought it had done.
Yeah, it's certainly looking that way. I know they had a couple of injuries from that Navy game as well. Obviously to their key player at outside half. They've had a massive rejig of the back line as well. And at the moment they're not gelling at all.
But it's all power to the Army's elbow. They have been absolutely clinical. They're almost been as clinical as the Navy were at the Stoop 3 weeks ago. But the referee has said that is half time. A very, very satisfying 40 minutes for the team in red. They've scored 6 tries. They lead by 37 points to 3 here at the interval. The only reply for the RAF so far is a Luke Riddle penalty. So, gentlemen, I think we've kind of already summed up that first half, but just for your thoughts, really, as the players are going in at half-time. Very different team talks from the respective coaches at the interval.
Yeah, I think from an Army perspective, and I'll leave the RAF to Owen, I think in every facet of play they've dominated. the only observation that I'll have, and I'm sure their coaching team was, is that their tactical kicking game, but they have absolutely destroyed the RAF in the first half, both physically in the set piece. Line out, arguably they've got the nudge there as well, so it's not good signs for the RAF.
But if you are a fan of RAF rugby, then it's not all gloom and doom by any means, because out on the pitch now, assembling for their very celebratory pictures are the RAF women's team, who obviously not only won their match with the Army today, but they've also been crowned Inter-Services champions today in a remarkable performance, winning by 23 points to 14 earlier on. They led at one stage, they led by 20 points to 0 against the Army, and they were in fine form. But I think we can now get down to pitch side in just a few moments, and we can hear from Julian and also Nick Bartlett.
Well, thanks, John. Well, Storm Hannah has been billowing over here and the West Country in the last few days, but a red hurricane hit the Royal Air Force in that first half. Nick, it didn't happen for the Air Force, but everything seemed to be going the way of the Army, including an incredible period of defence down there.
Yeah, it does, and the RAF need to try and build the phases of the coughing up ball far too easy. The Army, on the other hand, look a fantastic shape at the moment. There's probably been 2 or 3 scrums all game. The front row, Ken Dowden's just scored underneath the post. Austin's had a great run down the side. Bean and Perkins are outstanding in the second row. And what they're doing, we talk about Prasad before the game being maybe an hour member of the team at 36. He's just game management is fantastic. He's given Buller Macau so much time, and at the moment the physicality is right up there, and the RAF have got to try and match that physicality.
Well, look, all that's come in the second half. Earlier on today, the Royal Air Force women won their first ever Inter-Services rugby title, and now's their chance to celebrate as they get given the silverware.
Well, thanks, Julian and Nick, for that summation of the first half. So one-sided. But let's just focus then, shall we, on the celebrations for the RAF. A truly historic day for RAF women's rugby, as they have won the Inter-Services Championship for the first time. The Army, a very proud 20-year unbeaten record, a 100% record, has finally gone, losing by 23 points to 14. Tries earlier on, 4 tries for the RAF. We can see the team there waiting to receive the Inter-Services trophy this afternoon. It was a terrific performance by every single one of those RAF players, and a stroke of genius from their head coach John Wilding to move Amy Cockayne from the hooker's position to number 10 to fly half, where she absolutely controlled the game. She scored one of the tries for the RAF, as they are now presenting her with the Player of the Match award. Quite rightly so. You could argue she's probably the number 1 hooker in world rugby at the moment, in women's rugby, but she showed her absolute class on the field in a very different position, as the RAF captain Chrissy Shigzawa lifts that trophy for RAF women's rugby. And what a historic day it is for the sport in the forces. The RAF are Inter-Services women's champions, and they are absolutely delighted. I do remember talking to Amy, interviewing her before the England World Cup final last year in Northern Ireland, and we were talking off the interview, and she said to me, do you know what, this is obviously massively important, but what's in my mind is that I really do want the RAF to win the Inter-Services title. Well, they've finally done it. 2 years ago they showed that they were able to compete really for the first time against the Army. Last year they lost by 10 points to 0 at Halton in a really close tussle. This year they have come out and they have dominated the Army in a way that no other British Forces team has ever done, and they are hugely successful, and they richly deserve this title today. And Owen, you're still with me up in the gantry here, and you know what it's like, to have this sort of success. And, for the RAF women, absolutely richly deserved today.
The way they played today was outstanding. They totally took control of the first half. The Army barely got into the RAF's into the RAF's half, and it was only in the last 10 minutes that the Army actually put a few plays together. So it's richly deserved. They've worked hard over the last few years, and credit to them.
And a sign of great sportsmanship that the Army women's team have come out onto the pitch to be the first to applaud their winners, their victors today. And for me, I think that shows the sporting nature there. Obviously, some of the girls there have won their first caps today, and they'll lick their wounds. Of course, they've got the Navy to face next Friday in Portsmouth. And do you think it's going to make them even more determined to put the hammer down on the Dark Blues?
Yeah, I'd imagine so. They'll be looking to come back from this disappointing loss for them today. I know the Navy girls have been working hard since their defeat to the RAF, and certainly up in Guildford, they played really, really well. So next Friday should be a good spectacle.
It really should. The RAF players now milking every single moment here of this fantastic performance today. The Army did come back into the game towards the end of the match. They got two quite late tries from Chelsea Sneed and also Lou Dodd, with Gemma Rowland converting them. But all the hard work really for the RAF was done in that first half. They led 15-0 at half-time and really could have had two other tries. They had a couple of tries disallowed, one of which probably shouldn't have been disallowed. If you were watching the coverage earlier on, you'll have probably picked that one up. But it was the way they just were maintained their relentless approach. And I think the thing for me as well that's really done it for the RAF this year has been their level of fitness, which has really been outstanding. I was watching them at training a couple of days ago at Henlow, and the fitness regime that they went through, it's something they know they've been working really, really hard on to get themselves up to the Army's level in terms of fitness, and they more than successfully did that. I'm particularly pleased for John Wilding, their head coach, who masterminded the performance. John has been associated with RAF rugby at all levels for a very, very long time, highly respected, and he's brought this RAF women's team through to achieve the level of success that they have. And there's been an awful lot of smiling faces going around here at Kingsholm today. They won't be smiling with the performance of the men so far, but at least this means that they've had something to really cheer today. And it's just great for inter-services rugby, I think, as well, that finally it's going to be one team no longer dominating, and hopefully it'll spur the Navy on as well, Owen, because they need to match that sort of level, don't they, of commitment and also of ability. And we've seen it in the men's game when the RAF were in the doldrum for so long. They suddenly made it a 3-horse race, and we're hoping maybe that the Navy women can do the same.
It was certainly, 5 or 6 years ago, it was totally dominated by the Army women, and the close game was between the Navy and the RAF. Now they've invested quite heavily in the RAF women's team, and they've got the fruits of their labour today. If that can happen the same as it happened to the Navy, then hopefully this will be a good, even three-way competition.
It's very much the RAF. I'm just thinking as well, we're only going back, 3 or 4 years maybe, that the Army were scoring 90 points on the RAF. That is an incredible turnaround in a very, very short space of time. And the celebration's still going on down in front of us in the main stand here. And, just sort of seeing the Army players have now left really the Air Force girls to their celebrations, which are absolutely deserved. Andy, I'll bring you back in if we may, just for your thoughts, because obviously Owen gave us his thoughts really from a Navy perspective, but the Army will be really hurting about that, won't they?
The women's game. Yeah, sorry, yeah. Absolutely. It's interesting just watching the women down there. Then they didn't look too disappointed, but they've probably had a bit of liquid refreshment to take some of the damage away. But yeah, it'll be the first time, I think it's in 21 years that they've not won an inter-service game. So they'll have to reflect and then take stock and come back stronger next year.
There was a stage in the match where it looked as if they weren't even going to cross the the RAF line. So all credit to them for the way they did come back, and I'm sure that's something they can take from this game. But women's match, all won by the Air Force today. Of course, they dominated the Navy. They scored 67 points against the Navy 3 weeks ago. So absolutely worthy inter-services champions. But we're almost ready to start the second half here of the men's competition, and it'll be interesting to see how the RAF can react to the scoreline that they're up against. 37-3 the half-time score. The RAF will begin the second half very shortly. So away we are in the second half then. The Army will be keen, I'm sure, to dominate from the word go as they did in that first period. Oh, and the ball slips forward. That's Smith who loses out there for the RAF. Early scrum opportunity for the Army.
That was some good phase play from the Army. They took the receipt well, a good drive, 2 carries, great box kick from Wealdon, and the RAF have made a change at, I think he's come on at 8 in Tibbet, and unfortunately his first involvement in the game is to drop the ball.
Yeah, he won't be very happy with that. Here come the Army once again, and it's almost too easy, isn't it? The ball dropped though at the last stage by Ross Parkins there. The ball goes up in the air. The Army will have, of course, the wind advantage in the second half. Goes forward as a penalty anyway to the RAF. Your early thoughts, Owen, then on the first few moments of this second half. Are we in for the same as the first?
It wasn't the best start for the RAF. Obviously, dropping that box kick, putting them under pressure instantly. But they managed to work their way out of the 22. It is going to be very difficult this half with this stiff breeze. So I think we'll see a lot more of those tap and goes and ball in hand for the RAF.
Looks like the Army are lining up another change as well. It's Senatiki Nayalo from 7 Para RHA. He's just warming up now on the touchline.
Yeah, I think Steve Cross is down there, and it'll be quite a simple change. Nayalo will come on, and I would think he'll either go straight to 7 or they'll switch Miller across from 6 to 7.
And the RAF are having to make a change as well. They've got an injury. Lloyd Owen is having to leave the field. So this game taking its toll already on both sides. But Riddle will take the penalty. Ball hangs in the air, but it's out of play. If anything, I think the wind is getting stronger here at Kingsholm. We had a bit of a lull in the gale we had earlier. So I think we can expect the ball to be on the ground. Picked up by McNally. If anyone's going to scrap his way through, it's going to be Josh McNally onto the halfway line. Tippett's the sort of man you want around, isn't he, really, when the going gets tough. But again, the RAF handling lets them down. The put-in goes to them for the scrum.
Bolladao a little unlucky there. He's put a good hit on Tibbetts, and as he's tried to reef the ball, it's just gone forward, which resulted in obviously in the RAF scrum. But they look a little void of ideas when they get the ball out wide. So maybe if they just truck it up, maybe even kick the corners. But the wind obviously is causing an issue for that as well.
5 minutes played in the second half. The Army still lead by 37 points to 3. 6 tries in that first half for them. A real try-fest for them. The only reply from the RAF was a penalty. Some nice handling though from the Air Force. That's some good play and a high tackle. The referee has given them the penalty, and they'll try and keep the momentum going as they drive it forward now. It's a good tackling though, brilliant challenge there from Jamie Miller, the captain in there for the Army. A real hit. Another penalty though conceded by the Army. The penalty count is mounting up in favour of the Air Force, but these aren't in crucial area of the pitch. So the Army are forced to make a change. Yeah, Cross has come off. Yeah, Cross looking a little bit jaded. Obviously took a bang to the head. Looked like a high tackle to me, but the referee has brought it back for another penalty, and I'm afraid this was inevitable. This was going to happen, and it's Rob Bell who's mixed up in there. It's got out of hand now. Bell, who's been on a bit of a short fuse, hasn't he, throughout the game so far. The two teams squaring up. It was a high tackle though that caused that in the first place, and it'll be interesting to see what the referee does here. I think there could be a yellow card handed out here somewhere.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think it was a high tackle. I think Nyola just manhandled him and threw him around like a rag doll to the floor. The RAF have reacted, and then there's been a few fisticuffs between Dowding, and I couldn't work out who the RAF, but hopefully the ref just, plays on.
Both captains have been spoken to. The touch judges having a word. And we'll see what the outcome of this is.
I think a lot of this comes down to the frustration from the RAF just balling over. They really want to make a spectacle of this game, and that they're struggling to do so at the moment.
They've just not been able to do anything, have they, really? They had no sort of phases of play at all to give them, apart from maybe a brief period at the end of the first half when they could have, they really did need a score then. It didn't happen.
No, definitely. They were on the line for a good 5 or 10 minutes there, and I don't know how that's going to affect them mentally that they didn't get that score.
So a word being had with both captains again. I suspect this is a final warning. And there is a yellow card, yeah. And it's going to be Rob Bell who's going to have to lead the field. He looks like an angry young man, unfortunately. And he did throw a couple of punches.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Rob, he plays a physical, aggressive game. He's certainly not a dirty player. It's just, resulted in a few handbags and a yellow card and get on with the game.
He's been very unhappy with the referee, I think, really from the word go, and there have been various conversations that have been had. So Rob Bell off the field for 10 minutes, which won't help the RAF's cause one little bit, because they're trailing here.
No, and the Army have brought on, as you said earlier, Niola for cross, and he's another big, strong ball carrying player. It wouldn't surprise me if it comes off the top here, and then he's sort of sent up the middle.
Prasad, who's looked imperious in that position today, belying his years, 36 years old. Junior Balamaku, he's got such a lovely touch, hasn't he? But the ball...
that was unlucky there from the Army. Some great go forward by the flanker there, breaking a tackle, getting over the gain line, a set move to come back down the blind, back to Junior Balamaku, who just hung on to it, unfortunately, with a couple of guys outside him.
I think, Owen, there, I think you've been kind. I'm pretty sure that Bernie Bernard will be pulling his ear out there. That's a set move. They hit Niola down the middle. He's done his job, and Balamaku was, he's got 3 men outside him, and he's got to give in. It's a try, simple as that. And they've got to execute those chances, next week, because it'll be a tougher game.
It will. One thing we've sort of noticed really with the Army's build-up this year is how few games they've actually had in the build-up to the inter-services. It clearly hasn't done them any harm here, but do you think that might tell at Twickenham next week?
I think it's been, it's been planned for what Bernie's, come in and he's wanted to do. So he'll say no, that he won't. But this again is dangerous.
Well, Junior is absolutely running riot here. What a fantastic run from Junior Balamaku. Brilliant play from him. Takes the ball well inside the 22. Prasad. Out to Bean. And they're just lining up now, the Army players. And Junior seems to have hurt himself a bit with that run, but it was a fantastic run, wasn't it? It really lit the place up. And it gives the Army a chance to score yet another try and to open their account for the second half here. RAF being forced to defend. Prasad is going to go all the way through, is he? And it's to Junior, and that is the try for the Army, their 7th try of the game, and that puts them into 40-point territory. 42 points to 3 they now lead. Beautifully taken.
Yeah, that was a great counter-attack there from Balamaku from a missed touch kick from the RAF. Spread the RAF left and right. Trademark hitch kick and show by Jack Prasad to put Niola over the try line.
Yeah, and I think a couple of years ago he might not have passed that ball. If it was against the Navy, he'd have been under the posts.
Yeah, I still have nightmares about that.
There's JD. Goes with the conversion. That's good. Very good indeed. 44 points to 3. The Army lead this inter-services match. And they're worth every single point of that. This is turning into a bit of a mauling, to be fair, for the RAF. A lot of conversations going on down there, pitch side in the RAF camp. But I'm sure as far as the Army are concerned, very, very happy indeed. But what can the RAF do here? Nice work by McNally. And he'll pick it up again. Wood out to Johnson. And Riddle. Manning. Wood. Oh, what a hit.
Yeah. Beans on that, yeah. I mean, that phase of play there just been symptomatic of how the RAF played. They've gone from left to right, gone back from the initial sort of break by Morby, and then they've had 4 or 5 phases. Army are not committing numbers to the RAF coming in at 1s and 2s, and this resulted in Bean turning it over.
Almost playing into the Army's hands here, aren't they? There's not a lot that they don't know about. There's no surprise in this RAF performance today. And the RAF are going to make another change. It's Andy Stubbs coming on, the hooker. And Stu Philpott going off. Looks like he's picked up a knock. It's Johnson who's gone off, yeah. Here come the Army once again. Great opportunity for them with Lagu. Prasad. Lagu. And the referee brings it back for another penalty for the Army and takes one on the back. Approaching the hour mark here at Kingsholm, 57 minutes played in this inter-services match so far. The Army 44, the Royal Air Force 3. We haven't seen a one-sided game like this for such a long time in the inter-services competition, which will be a huge disappointment to RAF supporters watching around the world and those who are here at Kingsholm this afternoon. But let's take nothing away from the way the Army have approached this one. They've really been very professional in their approach to the game. And they have a chance now to add an 8th try. There's the captain, Jamie Miller. Junior again. Lovely switch. And the try comes for Lagu.
I mean, that's easy for Lagu. He's playing up at LFC in the Super League. I think he's 4 or 5 tries in the Super League already this season, and he is a lethal finisher, and that's just too easy for him.
Yeah, it was just very simple rugby. Off the line out, the Army tight head prop, flickering out of the back door there to Nyago. A quick change of direction down the blind side, and they're in the corner again.
The one Yorks player adds an 8th try. And we're approaching the 50 points mark here for the Army. 49 points to 3. Difficult conversion attempt here, but I'm sure he'll try and bend it with the wind as he did before. But this time the wind's not playing ball, and the ball veers off to the left. So it remains 49-3. But at least the RAF are now going to be back to their 15 with Rob Bell having served his 10 minutes in the bin.
Yeah. So the Army made 2 changes there. Prasad has come off and Dowding has come off. Interesting who they put into 10. I think they may go for Pataki in a 10 because they put Conor O'Reilly on and he's shifted out onto the wing.
Yeah, he has all the cards ready, doesn't he now? Bernie Bernard, he knows that he can. The work's done in terms of winning this game. And the replacements can really set about the RAF, who, again, they've had to make a lot of changes as well. I think a lot of injuries as well in the RAF side. But they'll keep trying. Heads won't be bowed. Morby. And can they work their way into a scoring position here? But the breakdown is won by the Army. Great challenge. Here comes Junior again. And the ball just goes directly in, so it'll be brought back with the line out. Who's impressed you so far in this impressive Army team so far today, Andy?
I mean, I think collectively the pack I think has been excellent, which is probably an area that we would have said would have been keenly contested, but so far they've had absolute dominance in certainly in the scrum. They've been far more clinical at the breakdown. Prasad has done what he does, which is sort of pull the strings. Bullamacow, Nailagu, take your pick. They've been so dangerous in the backs.
And the Army had so many options, don't they, Owen, as well? When they are going forward, so many different options to play with.
Yeah, definitely. They vary their game really, really well. There'll certainly be a challenge for the Navy next week, but I think it's really important that the Navy make their first set tackles and try and put the runners under pressure, because I don't think they've been under pressure all afternoon really. It'll certainly be a challenge next week.
Quickly taking a penalty, Dave Manning. McNally. Oh, and it's lost. Picked up again by the Army. Here's JD. Nicely worked forward. Conor O'Reilly there. Bulladell. But another penalty to the RAF. .63 minutes gone here. You're watching the Forces Network live coverage this afternoon of this inter-services clash between the Army and the RAF. It's the Army's home game, and they're certainly making the home advantage count today. They lead 49 points to 3, as you can see on your screen there. It's been a tremendous performance from the Army today against an out of sorts RAF team. We have to say they were out of sorts at the game against the Navy just 3 weeks ago at the Stoop, and they're certainly out of sorts here today. But they've not been allowed to play by the Army, to be fair. Rob Bell giving it 100% again, as he always does. Not a lot. I was going to say not a lot left of Junior's number, but actually I think his shirt was just a bit creased around the number 15. So
yeah, some more changes there in the for the Army. They've changed up their front row completely. Gilly has come on, and Matty Dwyer. So
to win his 32nd cap.
Yeah, some real talent coming on. Morgan Evans coming on at 9 as well. He's another hugely talented player that will add real energy as well. So it's looking good for the Army, not so good for the RAF.
It is. And Matty Dwyer, what a servant he's been for the Army. 34 years old from the Welsh Guards. 32 caps today. Gets his 32nd cap, which is a remarkable performance really for a front row forward, isn't it?
Tibbets has done well to rescue that there, because they were going backwards, and he's put them on the front foot. Some big collisions going on as well, so Nayola really causing some damage.
Oh, lovely, lovely play. That's brilliant. So what was that all about then?
I think the new Army 9 just tried to make his presence felt on the RAF 10 there with a little shoulder into the back. Nothing that a scrum half shouldn't be doing, really.
A welcome break in play for the Air Force, just to relieve the pressure a bit. And they're going to make another change.
I don't think they know.
There's quite a few replacements being made by the RAF in the forwards now. It's very much a new look pack here.
It's virtually unrecognisable, isn't it, from the kick-off? Good play from Dave Manning inside the 22. And a lovely touch forward there for the Air Force by Luke Riddle. It will come back, it'll be another penalty. And how important is it for the Army to deny even the RAF a score here?
I mean, their defensive coach will definitely be keen on that. Clearly, as far as the result of the game, that's not going to be important, but they will want a clean sheet as far as the try goes. But the RAF will, I suspect, kick to the corner and go for a drive.
As they tried in the first half, without success. The second half really hasn't sparked into life in the way that the first half did for the Army. But a try for the RAF now might just sort of spark them a bit. Here we go. It's a good drive for the Air Force. The defence, desperate defence from the Army trying to keep them out. And they've got the put into the scrum. It's their ball. Bell wins the penalty. It's a yellow card.
Yeah, he's put in Nyola in the bin there, I think, for collapsing the wall, or side entries indicated. I think he could have taken your pick, though. There was certainly a collapse went on as well. And I think they're more of the same off the RF.
So what can the Air Force do then against 14 men? Philpott into the line out. And the drive. It's hard going for the Air Force here. Philpott thwarted there. McNally. He picks it up. He's brought to ground by at least 3 Army players. But at least the Air Force building up a few phases here. Bell. He's brought to ground. Channel's in there, a bit of
It's been very much a stop-start affair here in the second half, which I think actually is helping the RAF. They've come back into it a little bit in the last 10 minutes and certainly putting the Army under pressure, and with the man in the bin as well, they may be able to get something from this field position.
There are a few precious crumbs of comfort for the Air Force today, but as you say, Owen, this might be one of them. At least they are enjoying some possession now. Is that because the Army have just sort of maybe just taken their foot off the gas a little bit?
When you get a scoreline like the Army are, when you got 49 points, it's always difficult to maintain that momentum and that intensity that they certainly had in the first half. Then you add all the changes in, which sometimes can add to it, but equally can just take a little bit of the momentum. And as Owen said, it's just favouring the RAF at the moment.
To be fair, the damage really was done in the first half, wasn't it? The terrific first half performance from the Army just blew the Air Force away, really. They have come back into it in the second half. They've only conceded the 2 tries in the second half, 6 given away in the first. But the Army have made a change, and it's Ross Parkins come off. Rob Heath gone on in his place. We've got around about 6 or 7 minutes to go here. But again, the The RAF let down by the pass, and the Army can regroup their defence. Here's Josh McNally, who'll never give up trying. RAF again pushing forward. A chance now for Toby Mann, but brought to ground and the ball goes out of play. And there's a sight to behold. Matty Dwyer with the ball, about to take the line out for the Army. Oh, it's a well executed line out, which takes the pressure completely off the Army as they aim to push forward, and that's Lewis Bean. Into the arms of Toby Mann. Really untidy this second half. Manning. A penalty conceded again by the Army. And it's another yellow card.
I think that's more of a team offence there. There's been 3 or 4 high tackles already, and that's the culmination of them.
And it's JD who's been asked to leave the field, so that will be the last that we see of him this afternoon. So at the moment, I think the Army down to 13, aren't they?
Yeah.
And just sort of thinking about the game at Twickenham next week, that sort of indiscipline they can do without, really, can't they? You know, if you're into the last few minutes against the Navy and things are all square, and you lose a couple of players, it's serious business. The Navy have suffered from that over the past few years.
Yeah, you know, both the Navy and the Army have fallen foul of that sort of indiscipline, which has cost us, you know, games and championships. You know, it's probably one of the 2 negatives. I think that the kicking game and maybe the discipline. You know, in the second half, arguably the Army have been a little disciplined. You know, but if we flip that around, the RAF will say it's because of the pressure that they put on, but thus far it's not sort of correlated onto the scoreboard.
I mean, they haven't really. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, their sorties into the Army territory have been, you know, quite predictable and lacking a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they look a bit sort of bereft of any sort of creative ideas when they do try to spin it. I'm not sure they've got the pace and the skill level to deal with the Army backline in that way. And, you know, because they haven't had the solid platform that maybe the Army backline has had, that's probably compounded it as well.
What do you think the Army have learned from the last couple of years? Obviously, you know, they've been without a title. They certainly obviously didn't win it last year. The RAF won it 3 years on the trot. What did they learn from last year, do you think?
I know that one thing that Bernie has definitely worked on, and they've got some sort of external help as well, is the discipline. I mean, you know, in the last 10-15 minutes it hasn't been necessarily great, but and this decision here has been symptomatic of what they've just tried to be a little bit more clinical. Though some would argue going for 3 points at 49-3 up is perhaps not warranted, but it takes a minute out of the game. It just slows it down, and the Army to regroup again.
It really is job done in a way. I mean, it's been job done for a while. But they had the penalty.
Maybe this will be the Army just trying to put a psychological, 50 points up as well. It does put an extra little bit of pain in the heart when it's a 50-pointer.
Yeah, that's certainly from a Navy perspective as well. They certainly see the scoreline over 50 points, and it is a psychological
But it isn't. He's missed it. The wind had him fooled this afternoon.
Shocking kick from Morgan Evans there.
Well, on my watch, we've played 80 minutes, but there have been quite a few stoppages in this game. So we'll have another few minutes left to play here. The Army, as you say, will want to try and get themselves past that 50 points mark. The RAF very keen to try and score points of their own to get some pride out of this. As they come forward now, that's their fullback Toby Evans. But again, the ball is not going their way. Another penalty.
Gareth Smith's just been penalised there for what was definitely a late shot on Rob Bell, which nearly resulted in a flare-up. And I think we might see another flare-up or two in the last few minutes.
The RAF are down to, or the Army are down to 13 men in these last few minutes. Well, let's say 14 now then. 49-3 the score here in favour of the Army in a game they have totally dominated at Kingsholm. Rob Bell driving through the brick wall, as is Dave Manning. Oh, some hits going in. Looks like Batty Dwyer in there. The referee's letting the quick penalty taken. Josh McNally crawls over the 22. So many handling errors as well today from the Air Force up there. It's been really symptomatic of their game. They've got themselves into position and then lost the ball, dropped the ball, had it taken off them. It's on numerous occasions.
That was some great pressure put on them by the Army there. Some really good line speed, just put them under pressure, and they ended up coughing up the ball.
Very close to the end of this game now. A very satisfying performance from the team in red from the Army. And that is the last kick of this 2019 Inter-Services fixture between the Army and the Royal Air Force. And it has ended in a victory, a convincing victory for the Army by 49 points to 3 here. They'll be absolutely delighted with the way that has gone. For the RAF, well, they suffered a 25-10 reverse just 3 weeks ago at the Stoop at the hands of the Royal Navy, and they've been on the end of another hiding today. Not a good day for RAF Rugby.
No, and you know, to be fair to the Army, they're really good value for that score as well. They've dominated, all the phases. I think the only thing they lost was the penalty count, and they've earned those 49 points. Absolutely.
I mean, Owen, obviously, you'll be watching this very much from a Royal Navy point of view. What do you think the Navy will have to do at Twickenham next week? They were very good against the Air Force last game. What will they have to do?
Well, I would hope that the Navy don't have as many mistakes as the RAF had today. The Navy scored quite a few of their tries from turnover ball, knock-ons, and their set piece wasn't as good as it normally is today. So I'm hoping that the Navy will be on top of their first phase play. Also, the first up tackling as well was a big weakness today of the RAF. Again, I would expect the Navy to not be missing those tackles and put the actual Army backline under pressure, because I don't think they were put under pressure on anywhere at all today.
Andy, you've seen both games. You saw how well the Navy played, obviously, against the Air Force 3 weeks ago. What sort of game do you think we can expect at Twickenham?
I mean, Owen were touching on earlier. I think, the Navy are probably as complete a team as they have been for a few years. They've got their traditional forward power, but they also got some decent runners in the backs. Some decent sort of outfield runners. However, the Army have really put a marker down today. Throw Rocco into the mix as well, and if the Navy don't compete up front and don't put in their first up tackles, it'll be a tough night.
Okay, I think we can go down to the pitch side now. Julian Evans is with Nick Bartlett for their thoughts.
Well, Nick, an 8-try demolition job by the Army over the defending champions, the Royal Air Force. That puts them in good stead with what's to come next week at Twickenham against the Navy.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's a long time coming for the Army. I think they've put that to bed now. They've got the result they wanted. They played extremely well. They're probably disappointed with their penalty count. They went down to 13 men at one stage. And they probably need to find a kicker ready for next week.
Yeah, conditions didn't help kicking for either side today, but Twickenham's a completely different place to go and kick. And as you say, it could be crucial. 3 points missed here and there could be the turning point of the contest.
It is. It'll be a massive game next week. I think the two sides, the Navy's in good form at the moment, and the way that the Army were today, there's a little bit of lull in the second half. But like you said, that's just the way serious rugby goes. Next week's going to be an absolute cracker, and it will be decided next week, and the trophy will be presented. So it's great.
The one thing the Army have got is 2 or 3 maybe fantastic ball carriers, not just in midfield but the back row as well.
I mean, by switching William McCow back to 15, and he normally plays on the wing, and then to see the pace and power that he's got when he runs it back. So the Navy be keen not to kick away any poor ball, because it would just be punished straight away. But when they keep their game simple, the Army look very, very good. They bring the big boys in, they allow into the centre, and they create space.
Yeah, Ratu Nelaga's been playing his rugby this season. In the other code, he's been playing rugby league up at Hull FC. So the fact that they've got somebody like that can come in, score tries, create havoc. It's going to be very difficult for the Navy to defend next week.
Yeah, I think so. The Navy's got a fantastic back row, and I think that's going to be key next week, that battle. And a couple of turnovers. The Army were guilty of coming in offside sometimes, so they'll be looking at that, looking at the penalty count, and they'll be looking to destroy. Prasad had too much time on the ball, the Navy be thinking, and he did play extremely well, and he was just able to distribute and get his players into the game.
And is that where it's going to be won and lost next week? You think the distribution between 9 and 10?
I think so. The line speed from the Navy, what they denied the RAF from was any quick ball, and if they can deny the Army from any quick ball next week, then they will be in a game. If they sit up the Army and the Army plays to their strengths today, which was very, very good, then it'll be in a game.
Of course, it's only in terms of the competition, it is only halfway in the competition, so we shall find out what happens next week at Twickenham. John, back to you.
Okay, we'll try and find maybe a couple of guests to talk to. Thanks, Andy there and Nick, for their thoughts on the game. Just thinking as well, obviously the Army have got a week turnaround before they take on the Navy at Twickenham in the big showdown next Saturday. The Navy have had a whole month to build up for theirs. Is the advantage with the Navy?
I personally don't think so. I think backing up week to week is the norm in Premiership, in competition rugby, that most of the Army boys play anyway, so they're used to it. And particularly after, a big win like this, you go into next week, they'll tip up, on Monday, they'll enjoy tonight, they'll tip up Monday, they'll be fresh, they'll be vibrant, and they'll be ready to go Saturday, absolutely. Whereas, even though the Navy have had 2 games in that gap, it's hard to gain that inter-service intensity, momentum, against other teams.
I know, and the Navy, they've not sort of just rested on their laurels, have they, for the last few weeks. They've had some competitive matches, and they've done really well in those.
Yeah, very much so. They had a tough encounter against Richmond, and then backed that up on Wednesday night with a comprehensive victory over Hampshire at Basingstoke.
Okay, let's go back down to pitch side where it really is tipping it down with rain. But Julian is now with the Army captain, I think, with Jamie Miller.
Yeah, well, cheers, John. Yeah, that was timing, wasn't it? Brilliant.
Yeah, really pleased with that. Just in time.
This is Captain Jamie Miller, skipper of the Army side. 8-try demolition over the defending champions. It is only halfway in this tournament, but you must be delighted with the way that you've started your campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the first 40 minutes in this game, the RAF couldn't live with us. Credit to them, they stayed in that game for 80 minutes, and that scoreline really easy could have run away. And credit to them, they've held us. In the second half. So a lot of positives, but a lot to take forward to next week.
You were out of the blocks incredibly quickly. You'll be pleased with that, and the 8 tries. But your defence at times today was fantastic to keep the RAF out, particularly for a 10-minute period in that first half. That says almost as much as scoring a try. It lifts the sides.
Definitely, particularly in the second half when we're down to 13 men, to defend our line. We're really pleased with that. And as I said, huge amounts of positive things to take out, and still some work-ons that we need to fix for next week.
Yeah, it is only halfway. What are you expecting from the Royal Navy next week then?
Well, no doubt they've been watching this game. We've obviously been watching them, and Twickenham is a game in itself. Stand fast. This is a three-way competition. Next week's is a game in its own right. So they're going to come at us. We're going to be going for them. It's going to be a great contest.
We should wait and see what happens next week. John, back to you. Bye, Jamie.
Jules, for that, and thank you very much indeed for that. Presentation time now being made very quickly on the field here. The RAF just receiving their medals, and they'll be very unhappy in their centenary season to have ended up with a wooden spoon today, but no complaints, I'm sure, from the team. Really, they were second best really from the word go. The Army very much the team to have come out today, and 8 tries is proof of the pudding for that. The Army will now go up to receive their medals and the cup that goes with this game. And players never tire at this, do they?
No, they don't. And it's interesting, we've still got, for both services and the Navy, there's boys sort of spread around all around the world, and I know that I've just had a message off the boys out in Kabul asking for a shout out to them, so good luck out there, boys. And they'll certainly be cheering on the boys in red.
They certainly will. And these presentations happening very quickly, and well deserved too for the Army, who came here with a plan, and it came to fruition very quickly. They were ahead after just a minute of this game, a couple of early penalties, and then they really settled down, and the tries flowed. 6 first half tries for them. With an outstanding performance. Not quite so much in the second half. A couple of scores for them, a couple of tries for them in the second half. And they didn't quite make the 50 points, but I'm sure they're not going to be too bothered about that. And there's Jamie Miller, who will now lift the trophy. I'm sure he'll be hoping that next week it's a slightly different trophy that they'll be lifting. But on the other hand, I think we can be guaranteed a cracking Army-Navy clash as a result of this, which of course will decide the Inter-Services Championship for 2019. Andy, you'll be commentating with our colleagues at Sky, which of course will be showing on Forces TV and BFBS and all around the world on our digital platforms next week as well. And I'm sure you're looking forward to the Twickenham occasion, but as a commentator as opposed to a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great because whilst you want your respective service to win, actually you haven't got the pressure that everyone's under. And me and Owen were just chatting there. This game is vastly different to Army Navy. Obviously the boys have run riot a bit there today, but the Navy will be a different challenge completely, and they will get stuck into the boys next Saturday and put them under pressure, and then we'll see how they do.
I know, and I'm sure Dave Pascoe and the Navy boys have been watching this one this afternoon with great interest, and are already plotting how they can counter and make a real show of their own, because it'll be great for Navy sport for them to be victorious at Twickenham next week.
Yeah, very much so. It's as you know, it's a great occasion. There'll be a big build-up, and I know Dave Pascoe will be working hard. He'll have the boys analysing this video, seeing any if there's any areas of weakness, and any areas we can look to attack them, but also where we can strengthen our defensive areas against their big runners.
Okay, gentlemen, I think that's just about it from us here for today. Congratulations, of course, to the RAF women. A really big story here earlier on in the day at Kingsholm, where they won their first ever inter-services title, beating the Army for the first time ever in inter-services competition. A terrific performance from the women in light blue today to defeat the Army. But as far as the men are concerned, it's very much the Army's day here at Kingsholm. They have defeated the RAF by 49 points to 3. My thanks to Julian and to Nick on the touchline today, and also to my co-commentators here today, Owen and Andy. Great to have you with us. Great pleasure to have you with us today. And we'll see you again, of course, next week at Twickenham, where it'll be the Army versus Navy for the Babcock Trophy. From me, John Knighton, from all the team here with you at Kingsholm this afternoon, it's a very goodbye, and we'll see you next week.